Hello and welcome to this ArtCAM Express demonstration. In this demonstration I'm going to show you how to create a Halloween mobile for children. As you can see on the right hand side here, I have a few of the installed modules that are available for ArtCAM Express. Now, I'm just using these modules just to make life easier for me, and if you already have ArtCAM Express, you'll see it does make life a lot easier for you. So, as you can see, I have Bitmap Layers, Vector Tools, I have Advanced 2D Machining, but that is also included within the nesting package. So if I was to buy nesting, I would have Advanced 2D Machining included anyway. And I also have the Texture Toolpath installed. So what I'm going to do is to just open a model. Just going to open my Halloween mobile here, and here you can see, if I just zoom in here, I've created the base for the mobile. So I have two parts with some holes in there. If I open up the vector layers here, you can see I have 3 layers here, and if I just zoom back out, I can turn this temporary vectors on, and you can see it gives me this curve here. Just turn that off for the moment, zoom back in on the base, and I'm going to turn the holes off. So there you can see the holes for the mobile are on a completely separate layer, and the default layer is the actual shapes. So I just zoom out now. What I'm going to do is, because I have Bitmap Layers installed here, what I'm going to do is import multiple bitmaps. So this will allow me to create the bitmap to vectors and vectorize the images. So if I just open that up, you can see I have the original bitmap layer. I'm going to import a bitmap, which is this bat, and I'm going to import another bitmap, the ghost, and I'm going to import another bitmap, which is this witch. So here you can see I can easily flick between the layers of the different pictures here. So let's say for instance I want to do the witch first. If I just zoom in on the witch, and I'm going to create a bitmap to vector on this witch here now. So if I click bitmap to vector, which is here, and I'll just move this down here so you can see, I'm going to click reduce colours, because I need all of the colours to blend into one colour. If you take a look here, you can see there are lots of different shades of grey and black within this particular picture. If I move that right the way down, you can see that that just brings it all to a black and white image. So what I can do is create the vectors around all of the black parts. So if I OK that, and I'm just going to zoom in just so you can see how badly pixelated this actual bitmap is. You can see it's pretty rubbish, to be honest. It's quite bad. So I'll just zoom out a little bit, and I'm just going to click create vectors, and if I just toggle the contrast slider bar down, and if I just zoom in, you can see it's following all of the vectors quite nicely. It's not giving me all of these pixelated parts. The actual speckle size here is a pixel tolerance size, so if I just undo that for a moment, if I was to put, let's say 0.5, it should pick up this pixel here, because that's just 1 pixel on its own, and if that was above 1, it would just ignore that pixel and go around here like it was previously. So now that I've put 0.5, you can see it's created a vector around this pixel. Now I don't particularly want that, so I'm just going to leave it at 2 and create the vectors. So what I'm going to do now is to just grab that witch and move her down there. Adjust the contrast slider, and I'm going to go into the ghost now. Now I'm going to create vectors now quite quickly with the remaining 2 images. So just reduce colours, bring that down to 2 colours, and create the vectors. And then I'm just going to move the ghost down to there, and the bat. Do a bitmap to vector, reduce the colours down to 2, and then create the vectors. And I'll move that to there. Go back to the original bitmap layer so it removes all of the images, and I can close my bitmap layers now. What I need to do now, as you can see, is these images are a different colour, so you can see that I've created these on the holes layer. Now I don't want those to be on the holes layer, so I'll just select all of those, right click, and then move vectors to default layer. So there you can see that's moved all of those to the default layer. So what I want to do now is to just create a few holes so the parts can actually fit onto the mobile. So I'll just draw some circles. Draw one there, and this is going to be diameter 3mm. And if I just zoom in, I can just press Ctrl C and Ctrl V to copy, and then just move that to the other side. Do the same again, just move that to the top of the witch's head, and then do the same again for the bat. Just move it to the other part of its wing. So there you can see I have all of my parts ready now. So what I'm going to do now is to nest all of these parts, and what I want to do is to create 4 of these mobiles. Let's say for instance I've got 4 children, and each one of these wants a mobile. Now I don't want to just grab all of these and just copy them across this particular sheet that I've got. I believe the sheet is 1 meter square, so I don't want to just copy these across the sheet. I want to nest these to minimise the wastage of the material and make sure that they all get on the sheet. So what I'm going to do is click nesting here, and this opens up the nesting dialog box. Here you can see I have my tool diameter set as 3, I have the toolpath clearance set as 3, and I also have the edge clearance set at 3. I'm allowing the part to be rotated. Now I've set this at 180 degrees because I'm going to be creating a texture toolpath over the whole sheet in a little while. If I wanted to really save on the wastage of the material, is to set this to a low angle, and then the computer would automatically work out where to place all of the objects. This would also take a little bit longer because it has a lot more calculating to do. So I'm just going to leave this at 180 at the moment because I need to make a texture on the top of all of these parts. I can also allow guillotine cuts. Let's say for instance if I had straight edges and the cutter would just run straight across the sheet using this straight edge just to cut the parts out. It's quite useful for cabinet doors, say for instance. I can set the model as the boundary, group inside and outside shapes on nesting. What I'm going to do is to group them at the moment, because at the moment you can see I have all of these parts on separate layers and I have holes within the parts. So if I was to nest this now, it would actually move all of those holes from the inside of the parts and then nest them as individual parts. So if I click group now, here you can see as I select those, it's actually grouped all of the inside parts with the outside shape. I can also create a leftover material vector if I wished. Let's say for instance if I wasn't machining the top half of the sheet, I could do a leftover material vector, and then later on I could save that and then use that vector again later if I wanted to create some more parts within it. So what I'm going to do is to just select the base, and I'm going to specify a number that I want to cut of this particular part. So I'm going to do 4 parts for this and apply. You can see here, if I just zoom in and I click on it, you can see it gives me a number 4 there. It's just telling me how many parts are going to be nested. So I'm going to do 4 for the bottom as well. So there you can see the 4. Now for the actual monsters, or the witch and the ghost and the bat, I'm going to do 16 of these and apply. So there you can see the 16 above the bat. Do the same again for the ghost, and do the same again for the witch. Then I'm going to select all of the parts, just finally check that I've got the right amount. So I've got 4, 4, 16, 16 and 16, and then if I just click next, that will nest all of the parts on the sheet for me. So I can close the nesting down now, and there you can see I still have a little bit of the sheet left over here. If I was to create the leftover vector, I could send that to the vector library, and then later on I could use that to place some parts within here. So what I'm going to do now is to select all of these, just right click and then ungroup all. Now if I zoom back in, you can see that's maintained the layers for me. So all of my holes are on the holes layer, and all of my cutouts are on the default layer. Now this is quite important, because when I actually machine the holes, when I actually drill the holes, I'm going to be doing this to a specific layer, so it saves me having to go around and keep on selecting all of these parts. So it saves quite a lot of time. As I said previously, you can do this without the vector layers, say for instance, but it just saves so much time in this way. Right, so what I'm going to do now is to just turn on my temporary vectors. You can see it gives me this curve here, and I'm going to be using that with the texture toolpath. So here you can see I've installed the texture toolpath, so I'll select that, and this is going to be over the whole model. Now in real time you probably wouldn't want to machine a 1 meter squared sheet doing this. I'm just showing you what you can actually produce with the texture toolpath. So if I click tool, and I'm going to use a 0.5 millimeter ball nose cutter, the pattern, instead of using a straight line, I'm going to use my temporary vector. So if I click selected vector, and then I'm just going to select that and set as pattern vector. Now I can change the pattern width and the pattern length. So here you can see it's alternating between 15 millimeters and 25 millimeters in width and length. I can also change the profile for the depth of cuts. I'm changing the minimum depth of 0.25 to 1 millimeter, and I can also change the angle, so for instance, of the cuts, and I can also change the step over and the spacing. The step over is in X and the spacing is in Y. I can also set up my material thickness. It's already set to 12 millimeters, which I'm going to be using. So there you can see 12 millimeters. And I'm going to select calculate now. So this is just generating the toolpath for the texture toolpath. And if I go into the 3D view, there you can see my texture toolpath. If I just close that now, and I can right click and simulate all toolpaths. If I just zoom in on this, you can see it's giving me this nice swirly effect. So this is going to be over the top of all of my parts when I cut them out. So it just adds a nice little effect to the parts instead of just having basic cutouts. So if I turn on my vectors here, you can see I have all of these parts here. So I'm going to create some drilling now just to drill all of the holes, and I'll show you where the holes layer comes in useful now. So if I go to create drilling toolpath, and instead of the selected vectors, if you didn't have the vector layers installed, you'd have to go around and select all of these holes individually, which to be honest would be a bit of a pain. Instead of doing that, I'm going to come down to the holes layer, and the finish depth, just make sure that it cuts through the material, so I'll set that at 12.1. The tool, as these are 3mm holes, I'm going to use a 3mm cutter, and I'm just going to click calculate now. So there you can see it's drilled all of those holes, saved me a lot of time having to select all of those. So I can close that now, and I'm going to create a profile toolpath. Again, I don't need to select all of these vectors because they're on their own layer, which is the default layer. Just make sure that it cuts through the piece. And the profiling tool, again, I'm going to use the 3mm end mill, and I'm going to click calculate now. So there you can see that that's created the cutout for all of the parts. So I can close that now, and I'm just going to open up the toolpaths. I'll go back onto the 2D view for a moment, and this profile here, I'm going to add some tabs, or one tab to this, and if I just click on the end mill here, you can see it gives us profile options. So if I select that, and I'm going to click create bridges, you can see the bridge length and thickness is 3mm. Just zoom in here, I can just grab this bridge and move that if I wished. So I could do that for all of those. I could also just select it and delete it if I wished. So let's say for instance this witch, I don't want that tab to be on her broom there, I want it to be over this side here. So I could just move that around like so. So I'll close the profile options down now, and I'm going to go back onto the 3D view. I'm going to simulate the drilling, so there you can see it's given me all of my holes there, and finally I'm going to simulate my profile. So that's cutting all of the parts out. So these are all ready to be assembled now, and I can create my Halloween mobile. First thing that I need to do though is to actually send this to the machine. So the way that we do this is to either right click on the toolpaths and save toolpaths as, or I can click here to save toolpaths. Here you can see the calculated toolpaths. Just move that one back. Here's our 3 toolpaths that we've created on the left hand side of this dialog box, and whichever one I want to move over, or if there are any that I want to move over, I just select there. Let's say for instance this is the texture, and if I choose my machine, ArtCAM has over 300 post processors available for it, so you'll probably be able to find your machine in this list. Let's say I use Mac 3 and then click save, and I'll save this into my Halloween folder, and I'll give this a name as 100, and then I can close that, minimize all of this, and then go into the G code, and there you can see my generated G code. This is ready to be sent to the machine. So I hope that you found this Halloween demonstration useful, and thank you for watching, and hopefully we'll have something similar next year. Bye.